Welcome back. Thank you for choosing to stay with us here on New Week. Now, at least 237 Kenyans have been killed by floods since the onset of the rainy season in April, with over 160,000 families being displaced in the same period. Tonight, on this part of the interview, we ask, is Kenya ever ready for a disaster? We host Venant Ndingila, who is the Disaster Preparedness and Response Manager at the Kenya Red Cross Society. Good evening, Venant. Thank you for making time for us. 237 plus people dead so far. This is arguably close to 5 times the number of people who have died of COVID-19. Is this a silent disaster?
Yeah, thank you, Abu. Yes, it is silent, but this is one of the disasters which we can predict and we can see coming, because we know the seasons in this country. We always have the long rain season, March, April, May, and the short rain season, October, November, December. The issue of deaths, yes, many people are predisposed to this flood risk in many ways because of where they stay, because of the livelihood activities which they get involved in, and therefore the risks are there in many, especially many rural areas of West Kenya and the coast province along Tana River.
So, Venant, if the weather pattern is as predictable as you say, why then is it becoming a yearly more so death pool that we must lose a certain number of people to floods year in, year out?
Yes, I'll say again, the people who find themselves at risk, there is one reason or another which makes them settle in those high-risk areas. Most of them is economic vulnerabilities, such that they don't have alternative land, or this is where they get their livelihoods in terms of small-scale farming. That's why they have to settle in those areas. Now, when the rains come, for one reason or the other, they are found in those places, and because of the daily activity, they maybe don't. But I'd like to say that, for example, the flow back of lakes like Lake Victoria, Lake Baringo, Lake Naivasha, this is some of the phenomena which are very rare. And most of the time now they catch people unawares because the water flows back into the settlements and villages.
All right, Venant, you talk of Lake Victoria, which has reached these levels since 1950s. You talk of Lake Naivasha, it last reached these levels in 1961. How much of a hand does climate change have in as far as these soaring water levels is concerned?
Yeah, there is, yes, some contribution from climate change because, for example, the season March, April, May is usually starts in the first week of March. But this time there are some of the areas west of Rift Valley and central Kenya highlands which received rains almost continuously from December, which means from the last season. They started receiving rains from late January to February, and it's very heavy rains for that matter. So the soils were already soaked since the October-November rains. So by the time this season started, the March, April, May, then already the soils were saturated. So therefore, the waters were just extra, and they were causing such havoc, which relates again to these lakes, especially Lake Victoria and Lake Naivasha and Baringo.
Fair enough, Venant. The very preamble of this discussion is the question, is Kenya ever ready for such disasters? You are the Disaster Preparedness and Response Manager at the Kenya Red Cross. In your own observation, is Kenya as a country everly prepared for such natural disasters?
What I'll say that there is an improvement every time. For example, what we are looking at here is the readiness of the people to be able to deal with this kind of disaster, because one way or the other, the rains are going to come, the land is still the same, the environment is still the same. So it is about the people being ready, having enough preparation, and for those who are to support the community, having enough preparedness. For example, the issue of early warning. the Kenya Red Cross Society, we have released, working with one of the mobile service providers, we released slightly over 24 million SMSs in the high-risk areas since early March. This was to alert people that floods are coming in your areas, try to do some coping mechanism in terms of early action to ensure you save lives and also property. This is the kind of interventions which are required, the kind of preparedness which you are talking about, which is required, because the people, the community are going to live in the same areas. There's no other alternative land. So we need to work with them so that they can be ready and they can be able to reduce the risk exposure.
Venant, you are using a futuristic little bit language. You talk of these preparations that are required. Why are they never in place before?
As I can say, yes, they have happened, and I'll bear witness that there has been some improvement because there is a lot of early warnings now. And for example, Kenya Red Cross, we had done preparation to support at least 36,000 families who were to be exposed to these floods. However, the floods this time, they became beyond what we had predicted, and as at now we are reporting over 43,000 families who have been displaced from their homes. So the preparation and the preparedness is always there, but the magnitude of the disaster is also increasing. Also working with or rather looking at the human activities on the high risk areas, so the exposure is ever increasing every time.
All right, I understand we are out of time, but two final questions. One, there are rivers in this country that are prone to breaking their banks. Talk of River Nzoia, River Tana, which has created the Tana Delta crisis. How much does this speak of those in authority then, probably not even you, but those in authority, that these are rivers known prone to overflowing, but it seems as though there's little done to make sure that the people who live there are not met by the wrath of these waters. For instance, I say that at the backdrop of what the water CS Cecily Kariuki says. She says, in Budalangi, the dikes that were there are not permanent, they're actually washed off. That sounds like a betrayal to the people of Budalangi, for instance.
Yes, so what is your question, Abu?
The question is, how much then do those in authority need to take responsibility for, in as far as these rivers that are prone to breaking their banks are not being stopped is concerned?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, again, there is some responsibility, you may say, but I'll say again, the disasters are going to come, and as you have said, the rivers and the amount of rains are still there, the environment is still the same, the community members are still the same who settle in those areas. So much as it that there is some infrastructural work which needs to be done to prevent or to reduce the risk and exposure, but still working with the community should be the answer here by the end of the day, because you need to give early warnings to the community, you need to prepare them, you need to advise them on what to do when the floods are there.
All right, Venant, my last question. We often talk of the statistics, hundreds of thousands of people, hundreds as well dead. Let's put a face value to it and a human impact to it. What do these people at this present time need?
Thank you very much. We have been responding to the needs of these people who have been impacted by this disaster. So the Kenya Red Cross teams are out there in the field doing needs assessment continuously. And so far, we have identified emergency shelter, or rather shelter for those people who have lost their homes, also food needs, also safe and clean water, also some health support, health and hygiene, especially in this period of COVID. All COVID risk reduction support is what is also very key. And we have managed to reach at least 15,000 households with most of these needs in terms of shelter, food. We have also done some cash. So But what we are looking at now, as the rains also continue to subside, we are looking at early recovery support, where these people need to bounce back into their lives in terms of shelter where they stay, also in terms of their livelihoods. Many, over 30,000 acres of productive land has been submerged. So these people need planting seeds. The over 20,000 livestock have been killed. They need also to, again, support in terms of getting back their livestock. So we are looking at, much as it is that they need emergency support in terms of health, wash, shelter, they'll need to recover back, because over 43,000 in 43 counties are having their livelihoods interrupted. This is huge. So these people need support in order to bounce back.
All right, Venant Ndingili, Disaster Preparedness and Response Manager at the Kenya Red Cross Society. Thank you for making time for us this evening as well.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I understand we are out of time. That brings us to the end of today's edition of New Week. I'm Abubakar Abdullahi on behalf of the entire team that made this production possible. Bye for now. We'll enjoy the rest of our programs.